Hey y'all, I'm DRBibliophile, and I am here with my long overdue review of Chris Bostic's Fugitives from Northwoods. The author actually gave me this book to review for free on Goodreads in anticipation for the next book of the series, and I gladly agreed. It sounded like something that would be fascinating, that I would really enjoy reading, and I did. I had a great time. It was a wonderful book, but I ended up taking a good long while to review it. It's going up right now. I'm stopping procrastinating and finally doing it, so Chris, if you watch this, Mr. Bostic, I don't know how to address you. I'll call you Mr. Bostic. Fantastic book. I loved every second of it, and I apologize for taking this long to get this up. But here it is. So, Fugitives from Northwoods, what is it? Well, it is a young adult book about a group of 8 teens surviving a kind of apocalyptic America. It's actually America in the year 2027 after suffering a major economic collapse. The way they try and combat this is by shuttling everybody 15-ish and older into work programs. They're really just work camps. But the reason they do this is to the statistics and everything that comes up, the unemployment numbers look incredibly low. So everyone is working, albeit in a work camp. The bigwigs up in Washington don't care. They like it. It looks like the numbers are doing great. But for those inside it, it is a living hell. In this version of America, and who knows, maybe even the one we're living in now, it is a nation that takes care of the very rich and the very, very poor. Those in the middle are just kind of brushed aside. So it's a very interesting scenario that, who knows, maybe could happen someday. So the main characters in this book are 8 teens, 4 guys and 4 girls, and their names are Penn, Rayburn, Vogel, and Gord for the guys, and Seswi, Perka, Jordis, and Gobi for the girls. So our story begins with the 8 aforementioned characters trying to hatch a desperate plan to escape from a fishing camp. In this particular kind of work camp, all the boys go out and do the fishing and then bring it back for the girls to process into consumption and distribution amongst the other camps. The story is told mostly from the first-person perspective of the main character, Penn, although you actually have to get about 50% of the way through the book before you even find out the main character's name. Not a lot of background is given about Penn's parents. We do know that his mother is off in another work camp, and it may have said something about his father, but if it did, it was so small I really don't recall anything actually being said. Now, when you first pick up Fugitives from Northwoods and start reading, it throws you right into the escape plan. I mean, there's no real backstory or anything, it's just right there. It's almost like watching the classic Steve McQueen movie, The Great Escape, and just fast-forwarding to the very end. Anyways, our 8 heroes escape from under the fence, under the cover of darkness, and escape into the woods. And from here on out, it's like just about any other survival story, exactly what you would expect, and very harrowing and very high-octane and very quickly paced. The 8 teens have to survive the typical dangers of the wilderness and just surviving in a social group, while also being tailed by the camp leader Trokar and his pack of vicious German Shepherd tracking dogs. This leads to a very stressful situation for all the teens involved, and a very, very dangerous one. Each of the teens has a very specific set of strengths and weaknesses, and each of them are tested throughout this journey, which, by the way, I'm not sure if I mentioned already, but they are actually trying to get up to Canada. It's set in the Northwoods, as the title mentions, and their hope is that they can get out of the United States and seek asylum somewhere in the north, in this case Canada. Penn is the leader of the escapees, and he is the guy that wrote up the plan, formulated it, and made sure it went off without a hitch. But to his surprise, throughout the journey, he's actually joined by Seswi, the oldest of the girls, and the one that knows them the best. And this actually works out really well for both Penn and the entire group, because she's able to give keen insight into survival tactics, but also just into the morale and how the girls themselves are doing. Now, I'll quickly give a brief overview of the rest of the characters, if you'll allow me to. Jordis is not given too much character description other than the fact that we know that she is not really suited for life outside of the fence. She's more of a city girl, and being dumped out there in the wilderness was hard enough, but trying to escape through the woods and survival and just all the added stress is not easy for her at all. One of the other girls, Perka, is the one in the group who always seems to be able to find like the silver lining in a situation, or when there really isn't a silver lining at all, she at least has the wonderful character trait of being able to keep a smile on her face longer than anybody else, which adds a huge boost of morale to these otherwise despondent group of teens. Vogel and his other brother Rayburn are absolutely as different as can be. Vogel has a very attached girlfriend friend named Gobi. She's one of the other girl characters, and from the very first time you hear one of their names, the other one is almost immediately mentioned. They do absolutely everything together. They watch out, they even sleep together, they join their sleeping bags up. They are completely inseparable, and that's really what keeps them going throughout the whole thing. Rayburn, Vogel's brother, is a loner. He doesn't really have anybody that he connects with, especially girl, but even guy-wise, he has no friends other than his brother, and so his character is just the brooding type that just plods along, but doesn't necessarily offer keen insights into anything or planning objectives as to what they should do, but he's there and a valuable part of the group nonetheless. Now, let's see, who did I forget? Gord. Yes, Gord. I don't want to say too much about Gord, actually, which is kind of fine because not a lot of description is given about him, but I'm afraid if I keep saying too much about him, I may give something away, and I have a terrible habit of doing that, but I am getting better. So those are the characters as well as the overall storyline, and now I can get into a much more detailed description and conversation of what I really liked and did not care for as much. Alright, let's start off with the good. The first thing I liked was the dystopian setting. I liked it mainly because it actually seemed like something that, God forbid, could potentially happen, and if not maybe here in the United States, then easily somewhere else within the world. The author did an excellent job of creating a world that you can easily get immersed into, partially because it is so believable. The second thing I really liked was how well you got to know the main characters, specifically Penn and Seswi. You really do know what's going on inside them at any given moment, and although they develop a romantic relationship throughout the book, this is never something that overrides the main theme and plot of the book. It's just rather a wonderful complement to the story. Another thing I really liked is how well Chris Bostic handled the potentially dangerous plot device of a love triangle. It's made very clear at the beginning of the book that Penn and Perka are together. Not necessarily dating, but together nonetheless. And so, as I was reading it and I began to see a relationship begin to form between Seswi and Penn, I admit I ended up having a oh no, here we go again moment, but I was absolutely pleasantly surprised and thrilled to see that it didn't end up doing a lot of turmoil to the story and unnecessary fluff, but instead it really developed exactly how you would hope a real relationship in that situation would. You saw this relationship handled in the correct way. Penn and Seswi began the relationship a little bit secretive and trying not to be offensive to Perka, and all the while still being kind to her. Penn was still her friend and everything, but he began to distance himself a little bit more, and then began throughout the book to be a little bit more openly affectionate with Seswi. And throughout the book, he never outright dumps Perka. He just instead moves on to the person he's truly meant to be with. And that's great. All the characters are fine with it. They accept it, and they do. Even Perka, who started out with Penn, seems fine. There's no animosity between them, and it just makes for a much better group. After reading that kind of writing, I really do wish, I know it can't be this way, but that every relationship in literature was handled this well, especially the dicey situation of the love triangle. Quickly now, I also really want to mention that I love the fact that there was absolutely no language in this book at all. This really impressed me because so many YA books today are trying to be dark and edgy or more adult and mature, and one of the ways they do this was by having the protagonists or other supporting characters throw out obscenities at every chance they get. They think this makes them look older and more grown up and things like that. But this one realized that a book doesn't need that, and it can be told just as well without it, and I really appreciate it. It was a breath of fresh air. Alright, that is it for the parts I really did like. Now, unfortunately, I do need to mention one or two things that I didn't care for as much. I don't necessarily want to, but for the sake of giving an honest review, I feel as though I need to. First thing I didn't care for was the initial pacing of the book. As the book went on, I really liked how fast-paced it was, but at the very beginning, I completely forgot what I was going to say. As the book went on, I really liked how fast-paced it was, but at the very beginning of the book, it was very rushed. I found myself wishing I knew a little bit more about the escapees I was about to be thrown into the wilderness with as a reader, and even involved a little bit more in the planning process of the escape. The second thing that kind of bothered me a lot was there was really no survival aspect to this book. Now, I don't know if it was just me misinterpreting the description of the book, but I was under the impression that this would be like a real survival book with what the kids, or teens rather, would have to do given primitive tactics and ways to survive in the wild. That really wasn't what this book was at all. Instead, what you have is a survival book in the sense that, yes, they are literally trying to survive running through the woods while being pursued. I understand that they don't have time to build elaborate shelters or start fire with a bow drill or flint and steel, they're running for their lives. They don't want to leave marks that a shelter would do, or even a big fire, and it would just take too much time. So I do understand, so maybe this particular argument is invalid. You can take it or leave it. I don't really think there was anything else about this book that bothered me. Oh, wait. You know, there was one more little thing. I think the author ended up falling into a classic B-movie blunder by letting you know which characters were going to be offed simply by not doing a lot with them. If you're not sure what I mean by that, then just think of the movie Jurassic Park 3. In that movie, the characters that get eaten first are the ones that don't have much dialogue, character development, or screen time. And you know, that's kind of how it was here. I won't say more for risk of spoiling it. Overall, I would give Fugitives from Northwoods 4 out of 5 stars. It was a very short, engaging read that I really enjoyed. The sequel is coming out very soon, and I do plan on reading that. Be it, probably not for advanced review, simply because I would hate to do that to an author again. I apologize once again if you get to see this. I really am sorry. I hope the review I gave was definitive and was my honest opinion. I promise it was. I really did enjoy the book. I encourage you guys to read it and just make the opinion for yourselves. The ending is wonderful, and it opens itself up for the sequel. So I strongly encourage you guys to read it. Alright, that's about it for the review. Thanks for watching, and if you guys like what you saw, please like, comment, subscribe. And always remember, reading is the special key to take you where you want to be. Thanks, and God bless. Bye.